Alright guys, welcome back to F1 News. Big reports emerging today that Carlos Sainz has officially responded to Audi's lucrative contract offer, a potential 3-year deal that would begin from next season. The report is it's on the negative, rejecting Audi's contract offer, taking a big risk and holding out for a major alternative. Sainz seemingly believes that either Mercedes or quite possibly Red Bull, given the absolute chaos in that camp we've seen over the last couple of days, will be giving Sainz a call in the very near future. Will this risk massively backfire, with Audi obviously looking to lock up their second driver alongside Hulkenberg right about now? Very much intrigued to your thoughts in the comment section below. Hit the like button if you enjoy. Subscribe if you're new as always. I would greatly appreciate it. This, of course, on the right-hand side is the Ferrari livery this weekend in Miami. Somewhat, well, not inspired by, but similar to actually what Lewis Hamilton wore in Miami 2 years ago. Thankfully, though, we do have one livery this weekend, which has actually caught the attention. Somewhat overshadowed, I must say, this RB livery by the maybe disappointment that Ferrari didn't do something a little bit more blue than they could have otherwise done. And I believe this HP rear wing is going to stay like that after this race. It's not just a one-off, which is somewhat unfortunate. But this is the RB. To be honest, this is how I think special one-off liveries should be done. It should be fun, it should be quirky, it should be unique, it should be something you probably wouldn't run for the entire season. But this is what RB are rocking with, and to me this looks pretty damn spectacular. Like, if I'm looking at a one-off livery, this is the type of thing that I would come up with, and it's pretty beautiful, I'm not going to lie. People have mixed opinions, right? Because either they love it or they are not a particularly big fan, but it's going to stand out, and that is kind of what I want in liveries nowadays, because we have seen many examples this season, and even in previous couple of seasons, weight-saving measures, not painting the car as much as they used to be painted, and sure, it's going to be, you know, still some carbon here, but wow, what a car. Whether you think it's nice or not, it certainly stands out right. This, by the way, as I was mentioning, is the Ferrari rear wing, the Mercedes, the McLaren, and of course the Red Bull for this upcoming weekend. Bybit is back on the car as well, because I think in China they have rules around what you can advertise and stuff. That's why it wasn't on the rear wing there, but it is of course back, and yeah, that Ferrari rear wing is no more, unfortunately. Couple of things this weekend. McLaren, they have upgrades. Mercedes, they have upgrades. Initially, of course, the Merc upgrades were planned for Imola, but they're just so bad right now that I thought we can't waste another race. We need the points. So they're going to bring them now, even though it's a sprint weekend, of course, which means less testing time for your upgrades, less time to be able to optimize them. But, you know, did Mercedes have much faith they can optimize their upgrades right now? That's another question entirely. Aston Martin as well, they have some updates this weekend. Ferrari, they're not bringing anything, I don't believe. Red Bull, I don't think are doing all that much. And of course, we'll talk about Adrian Newey in a second, because there's always more to say on that saga every single day. This was another big update as well here coming out of Will Buxton, that there is seemingly unrest at Sauber. Key changes made at the team between China and Miami. Very rare to see changes of quite a magnitude like this happening, you know, race 4 into the season in a 2-week gap between 2 Grand Prix. But yeah, Bottas has a brand new race engineer, which the belief was highly unexpected. So that's definitely a big surprise. Sauber, it's been a bit messy over there, right? We know that Audi are taking over. We'll discuss them in a second. Whether this is anything to do with the changes they are potentially making behind the scenes, preparing for Sauber to become Audi over the next couple of years, or whether this is a response to their underwhelming operations, shall we say, of the first couple of races. That is certainly a question for you guys, but we're going to discuss the driver market here in a second, and Kimi Antonelli will almost certainly play a role in this. He's been testing the W12, he's now over the last few days been testing the W13 at Imola, and well, there were some lap times published. We saw some of his lap time consistency in the long runs. These were his qualifying sims they made him do. So just to quickly mention here, this W13 is a W13, although it looks like, because it's got the W15 livery, which is a beautiful livery, I think it works very well on the zero-podded W13 from the 2022 season. It is the most upgraded W13, right? Because when they actually raced in Imola, it was a rather different car to what it was at the end of the season. It was overweight. They hadn't had, you know, the Silverstone, the Austin upgrade packages. So it is a better car now than it was when Hamilton and Russell drove it in Imola. But nonetheless, these lap times are impressive. Always difficult to know what exactly is representative based on the track conditions and the temperatures and what soft tyres are being used, what the fuel loads are. We just don't know. But the belief is the engineers were very impressed with the 117.2 on the softs and a 117.9 on the mediums. Just by some way of comparison, the pole time in 2021, so pre-ground effect, was a 114.4, I think, from Hamilton. So that was kind of the difference. And then next year we went there. These were the lap times in 2022. Of course, didn't race there last year because of the flooding, so that Grand Prix got cancelled. But in 2022, when they were there in the W13, the conditions weren't great. It rained. I mean, it must have rained in Q3, right? Because look at these lap times, and Q2 even got worse for some drivers. So it was a bit of a messy session, really, and these lap times probably not truly representative of what the cars were capable of, but just to show you that in the dry, the fastest we saw was a 1:18.8, really, from Leclerc, and the fastest the Mercedes guys could go was, 1:20.4, pretty much, from both Russell and Hamilton. So, just shows that Kimi Antonelli was doing a good job. Here's the theory behind that data, and I honestly think, like, beyond any doubt right now, Mercedes and Toto will want to put that guy in a car next season, because even if his Formula 2 campaign doesn't go swimmingly, I think they know and they feel that he's won everything in the junior series, and now he's hopping into a Mercedes and apparently very much impressing their engineers. They are going to put him in a car. Whether it's a Merc, whether it's a Williams, that remains to be seen as far as I'm concerned, but I'm pretty convinced that Antonelli will drive a Formula 1 car next season, as of course we believe is going to be the case with his current Prema Formula 2 teammate Ollie Behrman, who will almost certainly be in next year's Haas. So we'll get back to the driver market in a second, because if Antonelli is in somewhere, that restricts the possibilities for Sainz, and he himself may have restricted his own possibilities based on what we are going to discuss. Quickly, David Sanchez. He was, former Ferrari, Haas man. He joined McLaren not long ago. Then they let him go, and there was a clear disagreement there behind the scenes. I think Sanchez seemed like he wanted a more senior role, whereas he was kind of bundled in with many other directors of the aerodynamic development. So David Sanchez is now the executive technical director at Alpine, and he will oversee, which I think is what he wanted to do at McLaren, but he wasn't given the ability to do so. They had a falling out. He departed in rather controversial fashion, but now he's at Alpine. So good luck, is all I'll tell him at Alpine, because it ain't great over there. There's also big drama yesterday, if you guys saw this one, from Andretti. Now, Andretti want to enter the sport. They have been outright rejected. Their best chance to get in is genuinely to buy Alpine. I feel like that is their best shot, because it does not seem like Formula 1 management are going to enter, want to enter another team. They effectively see the sport as a franchise nowadays, when adding a new entrant wouldn't make sense unless they were to pay an awful lot of money to make it happen. However, there have been some concerns, even by US Congress, about whether they can actually do this, and whether excluding Andretti violates American antitrust laws. So 12 members of US Congress yesterday. Now, people were saying, well, there's so many more members than that. This is like 2% of Congress. Which is true, but when these things are done, it's not going to be like the entirety of Congress signing this letter. It's going to be pushed forward by some members of Congress, and then it's going to get heard, I imagine, by more members in due course. So, yeah, 12 members have written a letter here to ask why Formula 1 isn't allowing Andretti on the grid. They invoke the Sherman Antitrust Act and note the pro-US job prospects with Andretti's partner GM Cadillac. And, of course, Liberty Media, who own Formula 1, are public on the American stock exchanges, right? So they are a company under this kind of jurisdiction, and therefore Formula 1 may be considered in this kind of domain. So it would be fascinating to see, wouldn't it, if Congress are coming to Andretti's rescue in a way to get them into the sport. And there's been other speculation today on what an entry might potentially look like, but that's not in the bounds of today's content. Quickly on Newey, Giuliano De Chessa here says, again, I'm always really in tune right now with what's happening in the Italian press on the Newey story, because De Chessa was one of the first guys to talk about Hamilton to Ferrari on the morning where that story broke. So my feeling is that as and when Newey Ferrari may become official, I wouldn't be surprised if it comes out of the Ferrari guys before it comes out of the Newey guys, as it were. The timing of the gardening leave works out rather nicely for Newey. The fact that he's going to depart Red Bull officially this time next year, and he's going to be able to work immediately on another Formula 1 project if he chooses to. Newey obviously would therefore have heavy influence on next year's Ferrari, or 2026's Ferrari, and John Alcan, Fred Vasseur, they want to make some noise, and this would be quite the way to achieve that. It does seem like the other possibilities for Newey, well, he has either ruled them out or they're ruling themselves out of the conversation. One option, of course, is to retire and to step away from the sport. That is an option. One of the reasons that I've kind of described this about is that he doesn't necessarily seem to like the upcoming regulations, but I just stumbled across a video from the race, actually, from May 2022, following an interview with Newey, and he made these comments on the 2022 regulations. I do enjoy reg changes, but when I first saw these regs, I was quite depressed by them. They appeared to be very prescriptive, but the more you dig into them, particularly in the area of the sidepod and the floor, there's actually a reasonable degree of freedom, more than you first think. So Newey initially, when he saw the plans for the 22 cars, which of course he did a rather good job designing, as we've said, over the last couple of years, he wasn't especially happy by them, and there has been thoughts that if he doesn't like these upcoming regulations, he may feel similarly. So I wouldn't be that surprised if Newey delays any decision until we see the 2026 regs. We have the engine regs. We don't yet have the chassis and the aero regs. Those are due to be finalised by June, July, apparently. So I wouldn't be massively surprised if Newey waits around, sees what they come up with in June, July, and then decides, okay, I'm going to sign for Ferrari, which it probably would be, or whether he will decide to do something else, which is also possible. He'll be designing something, that is for sure, and Ferrari have lots of options to offer Newey because they've got the hypercar projects, they've got the supercar, road car projects. Like, there's lots of things they could tempt Newey with, in addition to working as a super consultant or whatever to their Formula One project, effectively injecting the ideas for the design team to execute. And Autosport were reporting yesterday that Aston Martin is ruled out of these discussions. The belief was, let's say 2 weeks ago, that Newey had received offers from Ferrari and from Aston Martin. Mercedes, we weren't sure. McLaren was a possibility, but it seemed like very much an outside shot. And also, I'm not really sure why Newey would go back to McLaren. Like, he's worked at Williams, won championships. He's worked at McLaren, won championships, worked at Red Bull, won championships. So, if there's any way to cap off the career, it would be either Ferrari, which makes the most sense, or Aston, unlikely, and then Mercedes, I guess, would be the other choice. But apparently Aston is ruled out. The belief the other day was that Newey wasn't especially happy with the Lawrence Stroll ownership situation, the possibility that he could bring Newey in, drive up the value of the entity, sell the organisation on. But I also feel like it might be a general feeling about the team. Like, for all Alonso says, that Aston are a very serious team. They're working on all this development. They've got their own factory, their own wind tunnel. They're putting in a hard graft, Aston, to try and be the best team they can possibly be. Does it feel that way to guys like Newey? Because you've got Lance Stroll in the seat, right? This is the incongruence at Aston Martin. They appear on the outside to be a very aggressive, ambitious Formula One project with the teeth to potentially be a serious challenge over the coming years. But when you actually look at their decision-making and you see Lance Stroll is still in the car, you think, is this really a serious outfit? And that is maybe an incongruence that Newey cannot reconcile. And, well, apparently he's decided that he's not going to go to Aston Martin at effectively any cost. And there was even this account, AMF1 News. I don't know if these guys have any sources, but according to what I've been told, Aston Martin is out of the race. Aston Martin made an offer, but it was more like testing the waters. Newey was not interested in this. So, it's got to be Ferrari, I would say, if it's going to be anywhere. And we saw a anonymous team principal say that it's going to be a disaster, this for Red Bull, as and when this goes through. There was some speculation from you guys in the comments yesterday who this actually was, because I kind of analyse the quote, right? The fact that this anonymous team principal says Adrian rather than Mr. Newey or whatever, and talks about Mercedes rather than like my team. He's not going to say my team if he's going to try and be anonymous, but you know what I mean. People are saying maybe Zach Brown because he's got a good relationship with Newey, but it does say team principal, not CEO, because Andrea Stella's the TP at McLaren. So I'm not really sure on that one, but still there has been some speculation. The big drama though of today is in the driver market itself. There's been so much chaos lately, and that is quite well possibly inspiring some of the things to come. So Honda, Yuki Tsunoda. Honda are partnering with Aston Martin from 2026. They want to see Tsunoda at top teams. They obviously support Yuki. There is a plausible situation that Yuki ends up at Aston Martin. I feel like this makes a fair bit of sense. The issue is that if Lance Stroll is there, then it doesn't make any sense. So I guess there will have to be a decision made at some point on that. But that's what Honda would like to see, is Tsunoda to take a step up. And I'm not really sure where else that could be than the Honda Works team, effectively. But this comes out today of Antonio Lobato, very well-known Formula One Spanish journalist and presenter, on the situation at Audi and, of course, involving Carlos Sainz. We know that they've confirmed Hülkenberg. The belief was over the last few days that Sainz had until, well, we thought maybe it was, before the Miami Grand Prix or something like that, which maybe it is, on making a decision on whether he's going to join Audi. Because Audi have basically said, look, Carlos, we're giving you all the money you want. We're giving you a potential 3-year deal or a 2+1 or whatever the case might be. We want you to join Audi. It's a very lucrative offer. We would like to see you here. The issue is for Sainz, of course, that next year, that Sauber ain't going to be great. And even in 2026, is it going to be all of a sudden coming out the gate swinging as Audi? The feeling in the paddock is not necessarily. So while Sainz could take the Audi offer alongside Hülkenberg, and it would be a good driver pairing, absolutely, and they would do a respectable job, he's probably not winning a championship there. And that is, of course, Sainz's ambition. So apparently he's taking a major risk by declining the offer, and therefore Sauber Audi are going to find an alternative. Regarding the driver market, Sauber Audi is going to announce soon who will accompany Hülkenberg from 2025. So then you've got to discuss who that might be just quickly. I think in this case, I would probably expect them to keep one of their existing drivers, so either Bottas or Zhou. There's arguments for both Bottas and Zhou. Bottas is stronger, but Zhou does have the Chinese market under his thumb, as it were. So, maybe that's something to think about, given the importance of that for Audi. Maybe if Hülkenberg is going to be a very solid driver, do you need Bottas there as well as Hülkenberg? You can argue possibly not. So, there's a debate on that. And maybe they could bring somebody else in instead. But apparently Carlos Sainz has decided to not accept the offer. And often you'll find that these Spanish journalists, they have a bit more insight into, Sainz, Alonso, these guys, than others may do, and miss the deadline. So the deadline he was given to respond, he has not responded. He has decided not to accept the offer. Obviously, accepting it would have given him the peace of mind, in addition to a good financial offer. But he preferred to take the risk to see if he finds a place in a more competitive team. And if they don't give him a place elsewhere, where does Sainz go? I mean, he could end up at Williams, possibly. And maybe that's not the end of the world. Sainz may think, and he may be right to think, it's worth holding out for the hope of a Mercedes or certainly a Red Bull offer. And if that doesn't arrive, he'll probably, somebody else might come along and say, all right, Carlos, we'll give you a seat for a year. And then he can, join Audi in another year, or join Red Bull in another year, or whatever the case might be. So I think this may prove to be a good decision. I certainly think that for Sainz's ambitions, this is the correct decision. The issue is that Audi are not saying, oh, well, it's all right, Carlos, we'll give you another couple of months to decide. It's like, no, you've had your chance, we're going to get somebody else now, which leaves Sainz in a bit of no man's land, and very much hoping that what he wants to happen will come true. Main options: Red Bull, if there is movement. It seems there is. And that's a big point. Newey departing is, as I said yesterday, seismic in the Formula 1 landscape. We've heard Jos Verstappen say that, well, I warned you guys the team was going to fall apart. Now Newey's leaving. Other senior figures are meant to be leaving as well. Is that Verstappen out of there? Possibly. If Verstappen goes, they will sign Sainz, 100% likelihood, in my opinion, for Red Bull, because why would they not? Possibly alongside Perez, they might get somebody else. They could try and get Albon in the immediate term. There's options there. But if Verstappen goes, they will sign Sainz. I'm pretty convinced. It just seems kind of unlikely that Verstappen will go. But I've said that Newey leaving Red Bull was rather unlikely, as with Hamilton leaving Mercedes just a couple of months ago. But of course it happened. So, who knows what's going to happen next. If Perez continues this performance and Max stays because the drama calms down and nobody else leaves, and Helmut Marko stays and Christian Horner really tries to keep a lid on that potential implosion internally, then do they need to replace Perez with Sainz? It could possibly backfire on Red Bull if they were to do so. So it is a risk from Sainz to turn down the Audi offer. I think it might be a good risk, because I would not rule out a Red Bull offer arriving. I think it's definitely possible. Mercedes obviously wants Max alongside Russell, presumably, in which case I would suppose they would put Antonelli in the Williams. That would be the plan over there. So Sainz can't really afford that to happen. But of course, as I say, if that does happen, then he would be at Red Bull. So I guess maybe that is the ideal case scenario. And Helmut Marko said the other day, they are talking with Sainz. I know that Horner denied this, but I mean, that's Horner, right? Marko says usually what he thinks and what he knows, and doesn't really care about the media repercussions, and then said that Sainz has this lucrative Audi offer. The thing that confuses me a little bit is that, let's say Verstappen stays at Red Bull, as does Perez, then do Mercedes really sign Sainz? If you're Mercedes, do you sign Sainz for, it's funny that, for a year or two, while Antonelli sits in the Williams? Or if they really rate Antonelli, do they not just want to put him in the car straight away? I mean, it's very tempting, right? So I think for Sainz, what he really wants to achieve here, because by rejecting Audi, Sauber, really what he's hoping for is the Red Bull seat, right? Because at least that way, let's say Max leaves and goes to Mercedes. there's a very plausible world where Carlos Sainz is your 2025 world champion if he joins Red Bull and outperforms Perez in what is presumably still going to be the strongest car. So I think that's what Sainz is going for, and history may prove whether this was a wise or a poor decision, but it is nonetheless rather fascinating regardless. So very much intrigued to your thoughts on all this stuff in the comments below. Also reporting from The Sun that Max Verstappen is set to be offered a £128 million per year offer to sign for Mercedes, in addition to ambassadorial roles, in addition to bring in Helmut Marko and whoever they can for the Red Bull team alongside Max. So Mercedes are doing everything they can from the pull factor perspective, but they don't have a great car nor technical team, you could argue right now, compared to how it was a few years ago. There are push factors from Red Bull. This is maybe a 50-50 now, Max joining Mercedes, but and Carlos Sainz is taking a bet that he will be able to benefit from the situation. So very much intrigued to your thoughts on all this stuff in the comment section below. Hit the like button if you enjoyed. Subscribe if you're new. Thanks for all the new subs over the last few days. Really appreciate it. Take care of yourselves, and I will see you next time.